Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Classic Comics. I hope you're all safe and healthy during this current mess. So, today I wanted to talk a little about a movie I recently watched, the 1976 film Network. Now, I've seen bits and pieces of the film, so I kind of had an idea of what the movie was about, but I'd never seen the full movie before until a few days ago. Network was released back in 1976, and it was one of those films that managed to be both a commercial and critical hit. It was nominated for a number of Oscars that year and won 4, including Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay. Network is a satire of the television business, but it's not a satire in the sense that most satires are these days. A satire can be done different ways, and in the past I think satire was generally more subtle than it usually is today. Modern satire tends to go more blatantly for humor. It's satire in the Mad Magazine sense of the term, outright silly and over the top. Network is a satire in a more traditional sense of the word. Its humor is very subtle when it's even present, and the film is more of a tragedy than a comedy. The plot of Network revolves around a newscaster named Howard Beale. Beale is the anchorman of the evening news for the Union Broadcasting System, a TV network that is in the ratings cellar and lags far behind the other TV networks. Now remember, this is 1976, and America pretty much still just has the 3 main networks at this time: NBC, ABC, and CBS. Beale's ratings are in steady decline, and he's told by his longtime friend and boss, Max Schumacher, played by William Holden, that in 2 weeks they're going to replace him. The following night, Beale announces on the air that he's going to commit suicide during next Tuesday's broadcast. UBS fires him, but Max intervenes to allow Beale to go back on the air the next night to apologize for what he said and give a farewell speech that will allow him to end his career with some dignity. Instead, Beale launches into an angry rant about how life is bullshit. His angry outburst triggers a significant ratings spike, and instead of firing him, UBS decides to exploit his behavior. Schumacher is approached by Diane Christensen, the head of programming, played by Faye Dunaway, to help develop the Beale news broadcast to help improve the ratings even more, and the two wind up having an affair. Later, in another broadcast, Beale becomes even more unhinged, arriving for his broadcast at the last minute in his pajamas and soaking wet because he was walking in the rain. He goes on another rant, this time encouraging his viewers to open their windows and angrily shout, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore." His appeal results in thousands of people all over the country responding, and his ratings continue to skyrocket. Eventually, Beale is given his own show, in which he goes on weekly rants about the state of the world and society. Max is opposed to how the network is exploiting what is clearly a mental and emotional breakdown by Beale, and Max is fired by the network's chief executive, Frank Hackett, played by Robert Duvall. Beale's show becomes a hit. In fact, it becomes the top-rated show on television. It's the first hit that UBS has had in a long time, and Diane starts developing other unorthodox programming in order to capitalize on the public's fascination with Beale. Beale then discovers that the conglomerate that owns UBS is about to be bought out by an even larger conglomerate owned by Saudi Arabia. Beale goes on the air and condemns the deal and urges his viewers to pressure the White House to stop it, which leads him into conflict with the network brass. Now, there's more to the film than all that, but I don't want to give it all away. But what struck me about Network, other than it being an excellent film, which I encourage anyone to check out, is how many parallels there are between Network and the recent Joker film. Much was written about the influence of Martin Scorsese's films on the Joker, especially Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. Those influences are pretty obvious, and I don't think that the makers of Joker had Network in mind when they were making it, but the two films have similar themes. Both films cast a critical eye on the state of modern society in similar ways and find society wanting. Both films emphasize the sense of powerlessness that most people have in a society that seems to be veering more and more out of control. While the people at the top either don't care or don't have any answers, leading to increasing political discontent. If one examines the plots of both films, you find a number of parallels. Both films feature a protagonist who is suffering from mental and emotional problems, who is exploited by a TV network, and who starts a social movement. Also, the climax of both films involves a popular TV figure being killed on live television. As I mentioned before, the film was both a commercial and critical success when it was released in 1976. It was nominated for several Oscars, and as I said before, it won 4 of them, including Best Original Screenplay. The performances are excellent across the board, especially Peter Finch, who plays Howard Beale, and he gives a tour de force performance as a man who is steadily losing his mind. The film was directed by Sidney Lumet, one of America's greatest film directors. His films include 12 Angry Men, Failsafe, Serpico, and Dog Day Afternoon, among many others. Paddy Chayefsky, the screenwriter, had worked extensively in television and based the film partly on his own experiences and observations. This is all to encourage you to see this film. It's kind of been forgotten and it deserves an audience, especially since so much of what the film is about is as relevant as it was in 1976. And let's face it, we're all, on lockdown, so you probably got some spare time. Anyway, that's all for now. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the like button before you leave, and also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications of more videos. You can also hit me up on Twitter @ComicsClassic, and thanks for watching. Oh, and one more thing before I go. I mentioned that Peter Finch won the Oscar for Best Actor for his role in Network, but he wasn't actually present at the Oscars to accept the award. It was accepted instead by his wife because Finch died suddenly of a heart attack a few weeks before the award ceremony. Finch became the first actor to ever be posthumously awarded an Oscar, and the second was Heath Ledger.